Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now this is a retro review. I've had a customer bring in a pair of KEF Coda 2s, which are a particular favourite actually. I always like the Coda 2. I mean, probably for the time, these were early 80s probably. I did prefer the Acoustic Research Air 18, as everybody will know if they've seen this channel. But these were a close competitor. We'll have a look at those in a sec, but first I wanted to talk about KEF really. I mean, it's quite an interesting company. Very innovative. They've never shied away from doing things differently. And I think that they've just gone beyond the 60th anniversary, so they're early 60s, so about 61, 62 I think they started. I can't remember, I just going to say who started. I can't remember the names of the founders now. There's two founders. One had BBC background. I'll put the names down here. I can't actually remember, to be honest. Not anybody I ever met, particularly. The thing about KEF was that they didn't just make their own speakers, they supplied drivers to quite a lot of other people in the 80s. And the 80s was probably KEF's decade. I mean, obviously we went way back and they did some good stuff in the 70s. But they I think it was the B139 Oval, what they used to call them racetrack drivers, and the B200, B110 drivers, were used by loads of people. And I mean, I've heard it said, and it's a bit unfair to be honest, that I don't agree with this either, to be honest, that it's a bit like Bob Dylan, that other people do Bob Dylan's songs better than Bob Dylan does. Like I said, I don't agree with that. But I think there was a little element of, there were some great speakers out there using KEF drivers, but KEF themselves never quite got to those sort of heights, really. There were exceptions. KEF Coda 2s, great. The Coda 3 was okay, actually, to be fair. After that, it all went downhill and they became more and more mass market and less and less interesting as they went on. 104ABs were good. They're big sort of reference monitors. They were a good speaker. A bit slow, but that was, you know, at the time, that was how things were a little bit. I actually really like 104.2s as well, which I might be on my own with that because a lot of people in the industry that I worked with couldn't stand them. But they were, had a little sort of pod at the front with two mid drivers and a treble unit, and then there was a cavity within with two drivers. I can't remember if they did that or they did that worked together, and they were fastened, and I think they actually worked together like that, and they were fastened together with a bar, and I thought they were good actually. Never liked the 105s, which were the big version, or the 107. I thought the 107s were awful. I really didn't like them because they just sounded like a small stand mount sitting on top of a sub, which is kind of what they were, and they never sounded right to me. Perhaps if you had a massive room. But later on, when they went into UniQ drivers, I kind of lost interest a little bit in it. I think the first series they did, like the Q30s and things like that, they were okay, but they started to get very mass market and very uninteresting, really. And I don't really think they've ever recovered. I don't like what they're doing now. I don't like the blades. People will shout at the screen. I don't like LS50s at all. I think they sound thin. It's interesting. I've got a lot of customers who use them, and they always seem to make excuses for the system, saying, "Oh, well, the system's a bit thin at the moment." But I think it's because the amp isn't good enough for the speakers, or I think it's this, or I think it. They never say, "Well, I don't like my speakers." They always seem to tiptoe around the fact, because LS50s get such good reviews, that it can't be them. But I suspect it is. But this, yeah. Anyway, I'm sure there's people out there that love the speakers, but I don't. This is just my opinion, and I'm just, I'm just a guy. But anyway, yeah, back to the Codas. I think the Coda was sort of marketed as a small stand mount, and I'll show you in a second how things have changed when you call something a small stand mount, because they're not a small speaker actually, really. Yeah, she's forgiven me a little bit because I was at the dentist this morning and I can't feel anything below my eyes and above there at the moment, so I'm talking a bit weird, and I can't actually feel my nose at all. I can't feel that. So yeah, if I start dribbling, just ignore me. So yeah, KEF. I mean, people like Monitor Audio use their drivers very early, pre the management buyout, so back to the Moek Bal days. I'm pretty sure they use KEF. Obviously, Lynn used KEF drivers to great effect. IMF, things like TLS80s and the later IMFs use, I think, did TDL? Possibly might be pushing it with TDL. I think I read somewhere that early Sonos Faber used KEF drivers as well. So they really you know, were out there in the marketplace and probably doing great business just on drivers. So they probably didn't need to do amazingly well with their own speakers, but I don't know. Funnily enough, the only speaker they never made was an LS35A, a BBC monitor. Everybody else who made them used KEF drivers, but KEF didn't do a version of it, which I always thought was strange, really, because there was Goodman's and there was Rogers and there was, well, I've run out of ideas now, but there was Harbath did one, didn't they? Spender did one. Everybody seemed to do it, and they all used the KEF B110 driver with whatever the treble unit was. I think some were T27s and some were something else, weren't they? Scan Speaks, probably. This is my driver knowledge. I'm not brilliant at remembering driver types. My voice is going, isn't it? Oh. You can tell I'm struggling now, can't you? So anyway, let's have a look at the Coda 2s before I dig myself into any more deep pits. For people who, any KEF fans out there are probably screaming at me now. But yeah, I'll turn the camera around. Let's have a look at the Coda 2s, because they're quite an interesting speaker, actually. And like I say, a bit of a favourite. So let's have a look. So there you go, KEF Coda 2s, sitting on a pair of, not quite in period, but almost, target stands. I think they're a good looking speaker, to be honest. I always did. I think they've got that sort of certain something about them. The bass driver's got quite an unusual sort of chassis shape. It's that sort of almost triangular shape to it. So it's a 3-point mount, which is probably inherently more stable. Using Scan Speak driver on the top, I think. I probably might be proved wrong on that one, and obviously their own mid-bass unit. Like I say, they were sort of marketed as a small stand mount, but actually, I've just put these here for context. If you look at the Dolly Brougham ones by comparison, that's what you would call the small stand mount now. Yeah, not really. There's not really any comparison size-wise. They're probably double the height, the KEFs. But that was how things were then. People didn't seem to have issues with having big speakers in lounges at the time, and they were a small speaker. If you compare them to like 104 ABs and things like that, they were huge, absolutely huge by comparison. I actually got them connected up to something slightly overkill, I suppose, but as far as hierarchy goes, it works. So P8 with an Anya, RAF phono stage down the bottom. This is a 5120 preamp from Exposure, and the 5120 monoblocks from Exposure as well. So that sort of combination there is probably 16,000 going into some early 80s KEFs. It does sound good, to be fair. It does sound good, very clean and precise, much more so than you'd imagine, actually. The only thing I'd say about these is I think the bass drivers are getting a bit tired. Whether the magnets are a bit weak or whatever now, I don't know, but it doesn't seem to have any real bottom end, even considering the size of the speakers. Actually, you would have thought they'd have. I remember them having quite a full bass end and, you know, really shaking the room. They're not doing that now, and I think it's probably age. I mean, I could try sealing the drivers in to give them a bit more sort of purchase against the back pressure, and I could try changing capacitors and things like that. But I think it's a little bit more fundamental, really. Suspension's a bit tired on the drivers. Funnily enough, these haven't done what a lot of others do, and they haven't rotted around the edge, which I expected. Notice the centre cap's kind of ungluing itself, but that's not really an issue particularly. But quite often the foam around here rots and falls out on speakers of this sort of era. So these have held up really well. So yeah, that's the front. What I'll have to do, I'll just have to cut for a sec, because to look at the back, I'll need to disconnect them, because I don't want to short the amps out. Won't be a sec. Okay, so back panel. Not a lot going on, to be honest. They've got, and I'm quite surprised, to be honest, that they've still got spring connectors. These are my very, don't judge me, I had to make some adapters. So, just so I can use the bare wire, really. So you push down and push the wire in, and they just about take 79 strand, literally just about take 79 strand. No way you can use 4mm plugs. I say push in and let go. It's very, very easy, if you're not careful, to get a bit of a stray wire coming across here, which should be disastrous, really. So yeah, that's the back panel. Like I say, a little bit, you could probably improve them a lot, actually, by making the cabinets a bit more rigid, seal the drivers in, put some decent cable on them, and just do something internally just to brace them a little bit. And you could probably improve them loads, but like I say, I think these are getting a bit tired, really. It's probably not, the actual basic fundamental parts probably aren't in good enough shape to do that. Anyway, So that's the KEF Coda 2, a bit of a favourite from early 80s. I don't want to come across as being anti-KEF particular. I mean, it's there's so many speakers over the years that wouldn't have existed without KEF sort of input with drivers, really. I mean, the Leonardo Barracks and Saras and Cans, they all used B110s, the B139s, the B200 drivers. Like I say, early IMFs. Celestion did, I think. Yeah, I think Celestion did. Like I say, I did read that Sonos Faber did, and early Monitor Audios did. And they just wouldn't have existed. LS35As, I mean, all the LS35As used B110 drivers. Even though, I mean, they did do some really good models. And like I say, we've got Coda 2s, we've got 104ABs and the 104.2s, and a lot of the reference stuff was good. Early the small references, I didn't like the bigger stuff. I never really got on with very well. I just felt as though probably their pursuit of using technology might have sort of tripped them up in the end. I think in the early days they were very innovative and they tried all sorts of different ways of producing speakers and different ideas. Well, perhaps they've just got a little bit too hung up on materials now. I don't know. I think that might be what's going on. I never really got on with them after they went to UniQ. I did sell Q30s and Q35s and all that sort of thing. That era, mid 90s, it would have been late 90s. But kind of fell out of love with the brand, really, because they seemed to go very mass market. They didn't seem to have anything out there that was really that special. Saying that, there's people out there that love them, and I think that's probably the thing with speakers. It is very subjective, and if there's something about that speaker that you like, then it's right for you. I mean, that's all that matters. So some old duffer going on about things on YouTube, if you don't agree, you don't agree. I mean, there's no right and wrong with speakers, there really isn't. So on that note, and hopefully digging myself out of a hole, I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm wondering whether I can go and have a cup of coffee now. The reason I haven't had a drink is because I probably would have poured it all down my front with it being numb. So I'm going to go and perhaps try a cup of coffee now and see if that works. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in a future video.